Hi everyone, I'm NBC 10 First Alert Meteorologist Krystal Klei. I'm so glad that we get to be here at Citizens Bank Park for Weather Education Week. Now, I wish we could be all together for Weather Education Day, and I really hope that happens next year. But in the meantime, I'm loving that we get to do these experiments and lessons with you guys, and today we're learning something very cool. I'm hoping to be able to make you guys honorary meteorologists. This morning, you learned about high and low pressure with meteorologist Steve Sosna. Now we're going to add on to that knowledge with how to read weather maps. But before you can learn how to read maps, you have to know the differences between different types of fronts and what they look like on a weather map. We all know that the day of forecast is super important when it comes to playing baseball. We're out in the elements. So we talked to the Phillies about why the forecast is so important.
If it's early part of the year where it's cold, you get rained on, you're freezing during that game. And then later on, if it's raining and humid, it's sticky, your jersey's sticking, everything's sticking, you dive for a ball, which I didn't mind, but you're just caked with dirt.
So before we get started, parents, teachers, students, make sure that you've printed off the weather maps that you're going to be using today to forecast, or you can go to our website, nbc10.com/weathereducation, and you can actually pull those maps up on a computer screen. But you'll want to look at those to follow along as I'm showing them off today. Okay, so let's begin our weather lesson, and we're starting with the different types of fronts. Cold fronts, warm fronts, and stationary fronts are the most common that we talk about when we're forecasting, and you might even have heard myself or one of my fellow meteorologists talking about them on air. How do we read them, and what are the differences? We'll begin with cold fronts. A cold front you can easily recognize on a weather map because it's a blue colored line with little blue triangles on it. Here's the important stuff you need to know. A cold front is advancing cold air. Cold air is more dense than warm air, so the boundary that develops between cold and warm air is steep. It builds up quick. The air rises fast and storms develop along the front. The area will clear quickly after that cold front moves through, and the area cools down behind a cold front. Notice on a map, a cold front is blue. The triangles on that front are pointing in the direction that the air is moving. That's important to know as we get to forecasting with our maps in just a bit. All right, now we're talking warm fronts, and the question is, what's the difference between a warm front and a cold front? It seems obvious, but when it comes to reading a map, there's a few things you need to know. A warm front is warm air advancing. No surprise there, right? Now, warm air, as I mentioned, is less dense than cold air. So the boundary between warm air and cold air is usually gradual when the two run into each other. The air slowly billows up and it produces cloudy and showery weather. Once it fully passes an area, some pleasant weather is possible with warming temperatures. But cold fronts often follow warm fronts, so the weather will likely change again soon. Notice on a map, a warm front is red. Those half circles on the warm front point in the direction the air is moving. Again, make sure you remember that when we get ready to forecast our maps in just a few. Okay, our final front that we're going to talk about is stationary fronts. Now, this one sounds a little more tricky. It's actually pretty simple. A stationary front is stationary. It's not moving. Now, when you see a stationary front, this is a boundary between two air masses, one cold and one warm, where neither is advancing. When a stationary front stalls over an area, we see prolonged times of rain, clouds, and storms all possible. And notice on a map, a stationary front has both red half circles and blue triangles. The cold air is behind the triangles. The warm air is behind the red semicircles. All right, now you know three fronts that we often use when we're forecasting right at NBC 10. So the question is, how do we read them? We've gone through where the motion of each front is and what it means in terms of the type of weather it brings. Let's put all our knowledge together and test your skills. Okay, I know we're at the ballpark right now, but I'm bringing the weather maps right into Citizens Bank Park. In fact, take a look. There's our first challenge. Are you ready for the forecast? I think we're starting with a pretty easy one here, but when you take a look at this, what are you thinking? What are we experiencing right now in our region with that big blue H atop us? Remember, you learned about this morning with meteorologist Steve Sosna. Go ahead and pause the video, make your forecast, and then hit play when you're ready. All right, did you make your forecast? Let's talk about it. When you see this, what do you think's happening to the area? High pressure building over us? That means that we're talking warming conditions. Temperatures are on the up. We're high and dry, as we call it, dry conditions, and likely a sunny sky too. High pressure a lot of times means we've got a good forecast. Great job, guys. Now we're going to up the game a little bit, make it a little harder. You see our next map here. The question is, what's going on? We're in between two elements. You see the line in red, that's our warm front, remember? And then the area in blue, that's our cold front. The question is, which way is the warm front moving, which way is the cold front moving. And on top of that, when you see the placement, what's happening in our area right now and what just recently happened. Go ahead and pause and make your forecast. All right, welcome back. Now that you've made your forecast, let's look at what really is going on. Boom, now you see the reveal of what's happening. The warm front is moving to the north. The cold front is moving to the east. Because the warm front just passed, recently we had rain and clouds move through the area. But now that it's moved through our area, if you forecast that we're drying out and warming up, you're right. But that cold front isn't too far behind. Good job, guys. This next one is a little bit harder, but honestly, I think you're kind of becoming pros, so I'm hoping you got this one. Take a look at our map. So what you see here is a cold front, but now it's on top of part of our area. So the question I have for you is, what's happening as the cold front's moving through? And what about areas that are sitting just off to the east, like the shore? The cold front hasn't gotten there yet. What are they experiencing and what will they experience? Go ahead and pause and get your answer written down. All right, welcome back. So the question is that cold front's moving over the area, what is happening? If you forecast that thunderstorms are rolling through, stormy weather and gusty winds, you're likely right. In summertime, it could even be dangerous, severe weather. Now, if you're right behind the cold front, you're likely starting to clear out already. Cold fronts move through quickly, but if you're somewhere like the Jersey Shore that hasn't seen the front move through quite yet, well, that stormy weather is approaching. You're still dry, but clouds are likely starting to increase as the storm is rolling in. Our last map, you guys are getting great at reading weather maps. Now, the cold front has passed our area. Take a look and you can see it's moving out to sea. So what's happening behind the cold front? Still stormy weather? Are we drying out? Write down your forecast and we'll get to it. All right, so you've written down your forecast, and I'm hoping you knew the answer to this one. We're now behind the cold front, right? Those blue arrows point in the direction the front is moving. So that means we've dried out and we're getting colder. In fact, in wintertime, this is when we'll see bitterly cold temperatures, is behind a strong and powerful cold front. I'm sure you guys did an awesome job forecasting with maps today, and I hope you learned a lot. Now, when you watch us on NBC 10, hopefully you'll know what we're talking about when we say cold or warm fronts or show off high and low pressure. You'll not only know what the weather of the day is supposed to be, but what's coming our direction as well, making you an honorary meteorologist. Remember, we've got more videos ahead in the days to come. In fact, I'll be back with you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. You can find our video on NBC10.com/weathereducation. We're talking climate change, a hotter and wetter world, and what that means for us here in Philadelphia. I can't wait to see you then, and thanks for joining me.